Ever since the first World Cup in 1930, which brought the interest of football to the next stage, the game has been recognised as the king of sports. And as you may have seen in one of our recent uploads, when we looked at the greatest club teams in history, the international stage is just as captivating. So today, we take a look at the greatest national teams of all time, reliving some of their finest periods. Also, a quick disclaimer, one of the nations in our list have been honoured with 2 eras, so you can try and guess which it is. The Netherlands, 1974 to 1978. For many, this team would deserve to be far further down the list, and it certainly would have been if the Netherlands had won at least one of the World Cup finals they played in the 1970s. On the other hand, this Netherlands side under Rinus Michels is arguably the team that had the biggest impact on revolutionising the game historically. Often referred as the Clockwork Orange, a name borrowed from the famous novel by the team's orange jerseys, the Netherlands in the 70s were really one of the greatest national teams the world has seen, and even to this day, it's unbelievable how they failed to win anything in its golden era. Under the tactical genius of Rinus Michels and the unparalleled talent of Johan Cruyff and Johan Neeskens, the Dutch redefined the game. Their style of play, the total football, based on the constant shifting of positions, ensured that the fluidity would be the main cause of problems for their opponents. However, even with their thrilling and unprecedented style of play, they still lost 2 consecutive World Cup finals. In 1974, they dominated the early rounds, famously dismantling Argentina and Brazil before facing West Germany in the final. Despite taking an early lead, however, they were defeated 2-1. Then, 4 years later, when the squad was even more experienced and expectations were high for an even better display, the Dutch reached the final again. But this time, they lost 3-1 to host Argentina. Argentina, 2021 to 2024. Yes, feel free to express your opinion in the comments below, as we suspect many of you to disagree with this choice. However, the fact remains that Argentina have been one of the best teams in the world, not just over the last 3 years, but over the last decade as a whole. Let's count the finals in which they've been involved. Starting with 2014, they reached the final of the World Cup in Brazil. Then in 2015 and 2016, Argentina reached the Copa America finals, which was a heartbreaker for their fans to lose 3 consecutive finals on major tournaments. On the other hand, however, this team has changed a lot over the years ahead of their golden generation in the period between 2021 to 2024. Interestingly, the only notable name from those 2 periods was Lionel Messi, and he truly had his vengeance after the fails earlier. First in 2021, Messi finally ended his trophy drought with the national team by winning the 2021 Copa America. He was in fine form throughout the tournament, although he didn't have many hot moments in the final, when Argentina was saved by Angel Di Maria against Brazil. The South Americans then went on to win the first edition of the Finalissima, facing the then European champions, Italy. But these 2 triumphs didn't even come close to the one that followed a few months later, when Argentina won their 3rd World Cup after a thrilling final against France. In what has been described as one of the greatest matches in World Cup history, Argentina won on penalties after a dramatic 3-3 draw in extra time. But that was not the end of Argentina's memorable achievements. In the summer of 2024, they won the Copa America for a 2nd successive time, beating a resurgent Colombia 1-0. France, 2016 to 2022. In the last decade, many great teams have had their strong periods. Germany won the 2014 World Cup, Belgium had their golden generation, Italy had the longest unbeaten run, Argentina were also on a high, but the most feared team of the era was undoubtedly France. Led by Didier Deschamps, they are notoriously packed with stars from the world's top clubs, which makes them the most persistent nation in the world. Speaking of strong periods, France's 2016 to 2022 is one for the history books. After a total disappointment at the 2014 World Cup, where they were knocked out by Germany in the quarter-finals, France completely turned things around, starting with Euro 2016 on home soil, where they reached the final but lost to Portugal in extra time. Then in 2018, they deservedly ascended to the royal throne of the footballing world, winning the World Cup after a massive 4-2 victory over Croatia in the final, a tournament that also saw the rise of Kylian Mbappe on the international stage. 4 years later, France were back on top and on the verge of becoming only the 3rd team in history to defend their world title. And do you know who's one of the other 2 nations that can boast the same? Brazil, 1958 to 1962. More than 20 years after their last World Cup, Brazil are still considered the greatest footballing nation on the planet. However, this was far from common knowledge in the first quarter century, since the establishment establishment of the World Cup, after Brazil had gone 28 years without winning the tournament, until the golden 1958. Yes, Brazil failed to win any of the first 5 editions of the World Cup, but then went on to win it twice in a row, largely due to the emergence of Pelé. The period between 1958 and 1962 really marked the rise of the king himself, who made his debut at the age of 17. With a hat-trick against France in the semi-final and a brace against Sweden in the final, Pelé became a sensation. Furthermore, in 1958, Brazil became the only South American nation to have won the World Cup on European soil, even to this day. When it came to the 1962 edition, Brazil were now favourites, and they didn't disappoint. Although Pelé got injured in the early stages of the tournament, the other big Brazilian stars, Garrincha and Vava, put in a massive performance and showed the whole world that football belonged to Brazil. And well, 60 years on, their golden era is still one of the greatest. Germany 1972 to 1976. Franz Beckenbauer and Gerd Müller. What more can we say? Two of the biggest names in history, and together with other notable names such as Jupp Heynckes, Bertie Vogts, and current Bayern Munich general manager Uli Hoeneß, one of Germany's golden generations was the 70s. This German golden era first shone in the 1972 Euros, where they dismantled the Soviet Union 3-0 in the final, showcasing a blend of tactical discipline and attacking flair. Then in 1974, West Germany hosted the World Cup, and Beckenbauer's leadership in defence, combined with Müller's goal-scoring talent, led the team to victory. A key moment was the epic final against Johan Cruyff's Netherlands, which we talked about at the beginning, when Germany was just the more prepared side, even though the Netherlands also demonstrated a lot of quality. Germany then faced the challenge of continuing their dominance on the European and world stage, and to do so, they needed to win Euro 76. Well, it certainly brought unparalleled brilliance, but was also a cause of big heartbreak for their fans. They reached the final where they faced Czechoslovakia, but it was decided in the most painful way possible, in a penalty shootout, when the famous Panenka style of penalty was born. France 1998 to 2006. The notorious France squad of 1998 under the legendary Aimé Jacquet, much like what happened some 20 years later, as we discussed after the failure of 2014, in the late 1990s, France again went through a difficult period, failing to even qualify for the 1994 World Cup. But immediately afterwards, they were the best team in the world for a very, very long time. The journey began on home soil at the 1998 World Cup, when France, led by the incredible Zinedine Zidane, displayed a combination of solid defence and creative brilliance. Amongst the key moments was Zidane's two-headed goals in a 3-0 win over Brazil that gave France their first World Cup triumph. Yes, they have had other great teams over the years, but 1998 will never be forgotten. It was a triumph made possible by the solid defending of Laurent Blanc and Marcel Desailly, combined with the midfield genius of Didier Deschamps and the pace of 21-year-old Thierry Henry. And if 1998 was the one that established France as the top footballing nation, 2000 will be rather remembered as a testament to France's growing reputation. The final against Italy was dramatic, with Sylvain Wiltord's last-minute equaliser forcing extra time. David Trezeguet then scored the only golden goal in a European Championship final to seal a 2-1 victory for France. And while many believe the triumph in 2000 marked the end of that generation, well, it didn't. France fielded a similarly strong side in 2006, but famously lost the final to Italy in dramatic fashion in Zidane's farewell match. Spain 2008 to 2012. Spain have just won the European Championship, and talk of a new Spanish golden generation has begun. Yamal, Nico Williams and Rodri are great players, but it's hard to believe that the great Spanish generation of 15 years ago will ever be repeated. Tactically, that Spain team was based on the tiki-taka, and most of its stars played for one of Spain's two giants, Barcelona or Real Madrid. Luis Aragonés was at the helm during the glorious period, and Vicente del Bosque took over after the 2008 triumph. When Spain famously ended a 44-year title drought with a 1-0 win over Germany at Euro 2008, little did anyone know that over the next 4 years, this team would become the most iconic in the history of the game. But that's when the miracle happened, because Spain's tiki-taka was simply unbeatable. Xavi, Iniesta and Busquets in midfield, Puyol, Ramos and Piqué at the back, with Casillas in goal and Villa and Torres up front. Yes, there are other names we missed, but these were the main 9 players who contributed most to Spain's magnificent golden era. The hard-won success of 2008 was followed by the World Cup in 2010, when Spain's mastery of the tiki-taka reached new heights. Yes, they lost their opening game to Switzerland, but bounced back to reach the final and win the World Cup against the Netherlands. Subsequently, Spain's success continued to Euro 2012 when they set new standards. They thrashed Italy 4-0 in the final with goals from David Silva, Jordi Alba, Torres and Juan Mata, demonstrating their depth and dominance. This memorable era was iconic not only for the scale of its success, but also for the contribution that Spain and Barcelona made to the game throughout the use of tiki-taka tactic. Frank Rijkaard, Pep Guardiola, Luis Aragonés and Vicente Del Bosque, the coaches who will forever be remembered as those who carried on Johan Cruyff's revolutionary idea that football is not won with directness and speed, but with patience and endurance. And since we've come to the end of today's episode, we're sure we've missed some other great teams, so feel free to make your suggestions in the comments. Also, if you made it to the end, we invite you to hit the like button and subscribe for more. It would be much appreciated. See you